It's often pointed out that 65% of people who are released from prison return to prison. But what about the other 35%, in particular the black men? What are their chances of success after incarceration, and what are the barriers in their way? Our next guest, Flores Forbes, is Associate Vice President of Strategy Policy and Program Implementation at Columbia University and author of Invisible Men, a contemporary slave narrative in the era of mass incarceration. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
That is quite the title. Explain what you mean by Invisible Men.
Well, it's a riff on the Ralph Ellison novel Invisible Man, in a society where black people felt like they were not seen by American society. In Invisible Men, what I'm talking about is that when a black man goes to prison, his circumstances are so adverse that what happens is he more than likely hides, as I did, for a number of years until they can remove the stigma of incarceration. Meaning that they can check yes on the box question, and so that they don't have to dissemble or to lie to their colleagues and friends. The slave narrative relates more to the 13th Amendment, the punishment clause that was put into the 13th Amendment, which basically makes you a slave when you go to prison. So I'm basically saying, well, I've been out for a certain amount of time, so now I'm telling this story. It's in the first person, but I'm pretty sure the example relates to millions of black men who've been to prison.
You're a man who knows of what you speak because you, as a young man, joined the Black Panther Party. You spent some years on the run.
Right.
You ended up spending the exact time, 4 years, 8 months, and 9 days in prison on a felony charge, and then got your college degree while you were in prison. For yourself, what was your game plan when you got out? Because obviously you were looking toward success.
Well, actually I got it like 2 semesters after I got out.
Okay.
And I made a plan. I read this book by a guy named Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, 13 Ways to Success. And a lot of people read that in prison. And I developed a plan that would lead me to get my bachelor's degree. I wanted to become an urban planner. So I moved back to New York City. I was accepted at NYU on a full ride and got my master's degree, and I've been an urban planner ever since.
So what do you think is the biggest problem for other men and other people getting out of prison, that they can't make that step to success? What's standing in their way?
Well, I think one of the main obstacles is that the criminal justice system puts the entirety of its investment in confinement. There are billions, hundreds of billions of dollars used to confine people. When you're released in California, you get $200 and a pat on the back and a bus ticket if you need it. In other states, it's probably even less. I'm sure in New York City, I think it's like $40. So I think that beginning that next step, I mean, you have no encouragement. So what happens with that 65 to 70% that recidivate? I think that in many ways they realize the obstacles are just overwhelming, and they wind up committing a crime or getting their parole violation or something like that.
So what are your suggestions for possible solutions?
Well, I mean, I believe that what needs to happen is the investment model needs to change. You need to invest something on the person as they come out. It's men and women. On average, the Vera Institute says it's $32,000 to keep a person incarcerated. So why can't that person, when they leave, because they're working slave wages when they're in prison. In some southern states, inmates are paid nothing. And in California, it's like 15 cents an hour is the average wage. So I think that what needs to happen is there needs to be some investment tied to you leaving, that helps you with housing, health care, education, some sort of a stipend, and probably up till about 5 years, because the research shows that if you stay out for at least 5 years, you're probably not going to go back. And then after that, what happens? Well, the society begins to earn their investment back. You start paying taxes, you start participating in the gross domestic product, becoming a consumer, and before you know it, you have the GDP is getting bumped up, because these citizens, instead of them being not producing any resources in the community, they become productive citizens.
In writing this book, you say that it is a first-person story.
Right.
It's very eye-opening. What do you hope is the takeaway when someone reads the book?
Well, I mean, for me, it's like a roadmap. It's the book, as Toni Morrison said, I want to write a book that I want to read. And this is the book I wish I would have had when I was released. So I hope that people see it as a roadmap. You know, it's for the formerly incarcerated, it's for their families, it's for policymakers, it's for academics. I mean, if people want to get a different perspective, because there's so little attention paid to the journey after prison.
You talk about the fact that when you go in for a job interview, a lot of times you don't want to talk about the fact that you have a prison record that shuts a lot of doors.
Right.
What was it in you that you were able to say, this is my past, I own it?
Well, there's three things that I think you need to do as an individual. And this has been done with researchers at Harvard looked at this. You need your education and your skills. Probably the second thing and the most important is your social network. You need for people to invite you back. You know, Vernon Jordan has a great quote where he says the last job he applied for was with the Chicago Transit Authority in 1957. That means that he was recruited and he was offered positions. And after I got out of graduate school, I believe that was the last job I actually applied for. So everything else has been, I've been sought out.
Well, we'll have to stop the conversation there, but people can read more in your new book. Thank you so much for joining us. Flores Forbes' new book is called Invisible Men. If you want to read more about his personal story, his 2007 memoir is called Will You Die With Me? My Life in the Black Panther Party. Thank you so much for being here with us today.